And I've always had this kind of ego that I'm, this high performer, this entrepreneur, this guy that, was obsessed with the gym and stuff. But I kind of had to strip that ego away from myself. I had to strip that identity away a couple months ago to kind of rebuild myself. Last year, I and probably millions of people said that 2025 was your year, was my year. And as the year went on, started losing motivation, we started losing that vision, and eventually it was not our year. That's exactly what happened to me. I thought that 2025 was the year I was gonna get rich, I was gonna set my family free, I was gonna achieve all these great things, get my dream physique, and I did not work hard enough for it. And for the first month, I was doing really well. I was training hard, I was pretty consistent with videos, and I was self-training boxing, I was doing all this kind of stuff, and I was like, oh yeah, January, I'm setting the tone for the year. And I fell into the 80-90% of people who quit after 2 to 3 months of their New Year's resolutions. And that's just what happened to me. And as much as I hated to admit it, I finally had to come to that realization over the last couple of months. About October is when I realized I gave up on my goals, basically. And I've always had this kind of ego that I'm, this high performer, this entrepreneur, this guy that, was obsessed with the gym and stuff. But I kind of had to strip that ego away from myself. I had to strip that identity away a couple months ago to kind of rebuild myself, because I realized that it was just all in my head and I wasn't doing actually anything to achieve my goals, to actually become the person that I told myself I was going to be at the beginning of the year. I remember this one specific time, and this was when I was still in high school. So this was earlier 2025, because I graduated last year. I told myself, I'm gonna eat clean, I'm gonna do all this stuff, achieve my dream physique. I remember eating school lunch, the school lunches that they would provide for you, and they're not healthy, obviously. They say they're healthy, but they're obviously not. And I remember eating it and telling myself, oh yeah, I just need the carbs. I just need the carbs for my workout. And looking back, right, I'm so mad at myself, because I clearly knew that school lunch is not healthy. And I'm a big believer in traditional whole foods, red meat diet. And looking back is just how ridiculous that was, thinking that, oh, it's just for the carbs. And yeah, if you train hard enough and if you do get enough protein, those meals, they're not terrible for you. But again, I'm a big believer in traditional diets and the primal way. Slowly, I kind of just was in this downtrend, and I didn't want to admit it. I tried to convince myself, and honestly, it worked. Convincing myself that, I was doing enough when I was just decaying very slowly. And I ended up going to college. I don't want to go to college, and I'm probably going to drop out to go all in. That's kind of where it broke, the breaking point. And in August, that's when I went back. September, they were just about the same as usual, but October is when it really started hitting me, and I started really hating my life. I started giving into degenerate habits again. I started doing stuff that I never imagined myself doing. I'm a Christian, and that's my name, but I'm also that's my religion. I am a Christian, I'm a Catholic, and I don't believe in degeneracy. I don't believe in this party lifestyle, but I saw myself giving into stuff that I would never have imagined myself doing. And so I knew that I wasn't in the right place. I knew that, I was not at all who I thought I was. I set this ego of myself where I thought I was a high achiever, and I was not at all. So 2025 ended up being mostly wasteful. So mid-October, I traveled for the first time out of across the country, basically. And it was to meet some entrepreneur friends that I know and close friends of mine, really good people. But I was not in a good mental state at all. And I don't know, the guys probably could tell that I wasn't good mentally. But after that, I was like, bro, there's so much more to life than just being at college, working 4 years for a degree that honestly, my degree is digital media, and I can honestly learn all this stuff in 3 months. If I genuinely wanted to study digital media, I could learn all that stuff in 3 months easily. So I looked at it and I'm just like, why am I even here? What am I doing at college when I just had the best realization of my life, the best wake-up call of my life, which was being with other high achievers. And it's like, bro, clearly I'm not at the level that I said I was, and I need to completely revamp my life. And so I got home, and instead of adding all these things, so a lot of times people will add habits, they'll add meditation, they'll add journaling, they'll add working out 3 times a day, they'll work for 10 hours a day, and they'll be like, oh yeah, I'm locked in. But you burn out after a week. That's how I've been throughout the whole entire year of 2025. I mean, it's not that extreme, obviously, I'm exaggerating, but I would see myself, for a week doing all of the habits that I wanted to do, all of the work that I wanted to do, the training I wanted to do. And instead of doing the same thing I was doing where I was reaching my ceiling for a week and then falling back down, I decided to do this one little thing. So instead of focusing on my ceiling and just bouncing back to my floor, I decided to raise the floor. So instead of focusing on adding all of these things, adding more, that's what most people get wrong. You can't add more until you raise your floor. So that's what I focused on, raising my floor. And that's what you probably should do too this year if you don't want to waste it. So instead of, my ceiling being up here and my floor being down here, I put my floor up here where I can actually manage my tasks. I can do it every day consistently without burning out, still love my life. And that's what has made me get the most progress out of these last few months. So the last few months of 2025 were actually really good for me. I got a lot more done than I did the first 3 quarters of the year. So it was actually a lot more productive. Now, even though I could have done more, I could have done more, absolutely. This has really set my floor higher to where I know for certain now that 2026 is going to be a lot better of a year than last year was, because I learned a lot from, failing, from falling, going to one of the lowest points of my life. I won't even lie. Like a lot of people say that, but genuinely, like I absolutely hated myself a couple months ago. You don't need to add more things this year. Eventually you need to get to that point. But for the first couple of months of this year, you probably shouldn't be adding a bunch of things. You probably should just be focusing on what you're already doing and raise that standard. So I started eating pretty clean over the past few months and training pretty hard consistently, actually. So instead of adding, 2 more hours of working out, I'm just gonna add consistent training and consistently clean. So like no cheat meals, obviously. Like that might seem a little extreme for some people, but for me, it's like I've consistently been at this floor of 80-20 eating clean, 80-20 training consistently. And so I might as well level it up now because I know I can manage it. So don't just go 0 to hero. That's not how it really works. And I don't think 1% better every day works either. It's more of a 1% better every week in a way. Because if you're doing 1% better every day, it's just kind of, cheesy. Like nobody really levels up 1% every day. Like it's like, oh, all these self-improvement like nerds will say 1% better every day. Like that's not really how it works. Judge it more off of months, weeks, instead of days. You're not going to be able to really judge 1% better every day, but you can judge 1%, 2%, 3% every week. So if you don't want to waste 2026 like I wasted 2025, just listen to this advice. If you don't like the message, whatever, bro. But I also want you to check out my school community for MMA entrepreneurs. They're for guys that train MMA and also run businesses. It's to help you guys lock in and stuff. So check that out if you want. As always, God bless you, and I'll see you in the next video.